the land fund legislation to bring it into line with what was resolved by the Senate. And I want to make that very clear.
The opposition understood that he started the meter ticking. The 3-month meter ticking. Yes, I know about you, brother. About the 3-month meter. We've seen the opposition. We put the challenge up to you, and you buckled. And you buckled. So, Mr. Speaker, no.
Order.
This is all.
Order. The Prime Minister has the call.
The empirical test is we put up the challenge and you buckled. And you're now saying you don't like the bill. You had a chance in the Senate to do justice to Aboriginal people and you didn't. You sent the bill back full of these shoddy, appalling amendments. And then when we faced you up to it, you decided to say today you'd pass the bill, but when you become a government, you'll then put all of these amendments back, if you have your way, back into the legislation. In other words, you'll deny Aboriginal people that which the Parliament would have given. In other words, you've proved by your actions you haven't changed your view.
The Senate amendments were rejected.
Canberra Times article which exposed one of the most appalling and sinister developments in Australian politics. Now, Mr. Speaker...
But that was as far as he was going for the moment. Out of the ensuing babble, Wilson Tuckey was given his marching orders.
You will be removed for 1 hour. The Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, what's happened here is that the Liberal Party has circulated for reaction, and they've admitted, Mr. Speaker, that the survey document was genuine. It is theirs, and the survey has surveyed 300 to 400 people in the community, and conducted last week by the Roy Morgan Research Centre. Now, Mr. Speaker, it goes on to say this. Mr. Robb, the director of the Liberal Party, said, "We asked questions that we understood to be true." These are the questions. It says this.
Order.
It says this. On abortion, they say that Sue Robbins has stated she supports the right to abortion up to 9 months of pregnancy. It's untrue. She's never stated that she supports the right of abortion up to 9 months of pregnancy. On ADEX, neither did Sue Robinson nor the Canberra LP participate in nor supported the violent ADEX demonstration. On the book she's supposed to have been written, Building Bridges, Sue Robinson has never written a book called Building Bridges and does not hold the view that the poor should take arms and fight for their livelihood. They say she was a member of the Canberra Labor Club executive and then it's bankrupt. The Labor Club has never gone bankrupt. It's in fact trading profitably and having its best year ever.
Order.
They make allegations about her association with the issue known as VITAB, and she makes clear she gave full and frank evidence to the Committee of Inquiry into VITAB, and the committee found no evidence of wrongdoing or illegal or improper behaviour on her part, and it goes on. They say at the beginning of the questionnaire, all of the statements I'm going to read to you are true. I intend to refer this matter to the Minister for Administrative Services for reference to the
Order.
To the Electoral Commissioner to see if it's in breach of the Electoral Act, and also, Mr. Speaker, I intend to have it refer to the Joint Standing Committee on Electoral Matters. Now, Mr. Speaker, the architects of this outrage, Andrew Robb, the Federal Director of the Liberal Party, should be dismissed or should resign. Should be dismissed. And the Leader of the Opposition, if he is compliant in this technique, he should disown it and apologise or force Mr. Robb to resign. Now, Mr. Speaker,
Order.
The polling director of the Liberal Party, Mr. Mark Textor, who pioneered this technique in Australia in a particularly vicious way, works in Mr. Howard's office. Mr. Speaker, the policy of the party's been honest.
Member for Gilmore.
Dull but honest. Now, Mr. Speaker, it's dull but dishonest.
Member for McKellar.
Dull and dishonest. And here we have a whole lot of defamatory allegations made against a person to spread around to 300 or 400 people a couple of months before a poll to influence the way the election is being held. Taken off the grubbiest techniques employed by the right in the United States and which are now being employed by by the federal director of the Liberal Party, but we don't know whether knowingly or otherwise by the federal leader of the Liberal Party, John Howard. Let him say
Member
whether
for
Mr.
Barara has already
Textor and his
been called
office
to
is
order
actually
once.
operating with his knowledge and support. Does John Howard believe, who wants to paint himself as Honest John, is this the sort of honesty that we can expect in Australian politics from the alternative government? Is this the sort of honesty the electors of the ACT are entitled to expect from this new-look honest Liberal Party?
Both sides will come to
Or
order.
is this the same grubby tactics we saw when we had the red arrows and the sandpans coming down from China in the 1960s, or reds under beds in the 1950s? Now, Mr. Speaker, John Howard may laugh at this this absolutely putrid technique of dishonesty, this putrid dishonesty.
Those on my left.
He may laugh, but the electorate will hold him accountable for the introduction of yet another appalling tactic by the Liberal Party in this country, borrowed from right-wing associates in other countries.
Mr. Howard.
You'll resume your seat.
Another day, another Liberal...
Look, Andrew Robb has got to stop writing letters. He wrote to the honourable member for Banks and suggested to him that he ought to join in a campaign of frightening the life of all recipients of social security benefits. He got his telephone into action and was phoning around in a push poll, phoning around people in Canberra with misinformation, and now he started to write on fundraising matters to George Gear. Now, George takes a small amount of offence at this because he received a letter recently entitled "An Urgent Message from the Liberal Party of Australia. $10,000 cash and prizes must be won. Dear the Gear family," I'll get on to so what. "As you read this message, you may be richer than you think. For a supporter has advanced $10,000 cash and prizes to be awarded to the Gear family or someone else who will respond to messages just like this." And he goes on, "Our research has proven that Australians want the Liberal Party to govern Australia and they are prepared to help win it. Unfortunately, we don't have the union bosses to collect the money for us, so we decided to you might have a few business contributors, but you haven't got the union bosses, so according to this. So we decided to instigate this donation incentive plan in which the Gear family can take part in the $10,000 cash and prizes and sweepstakes." And then it goes on to 3 ways in which the Gear family can benefit. Now, there's an unfortunate thing about this letter. As you read through this letter authorised by Andrew Robb, it contains within it suggestions that it is a legitimate raffle-type activity licensed in the ACT in the Northern Territory. That's what the number seems to indicate. Unfortunately, it doesn't have a West Australian number on it. Now, whether West Australians, the problem with that is the member for Moore would know. It's a fine of 2,500 grand or 6 months jail, if that actually happens to be the case. So if that is the case, then perhaps the executive director of the Liberal Party will finally reach his just reward. But really, if you're going to have any show of knocking us off in an election campaign, you're going to have to get your act together much better than this. And at least when you do your raffles, don't do them with George's family, do them legally.
Moralising about electoral practices, I asked the Prime Minister, is he aware that in the recent ACT elections, the Labor Party targeted unsuspecting voters by issuing its own how-to-vote card for independence? No. Is he also aware that the ALP issued instructions to booth captains that ALP workers handing out these cards should not wear any identifiable badges? And I quote from the instructions, and I quote, Mr. Speaker, the person handling... Oh, it's routine when you do it, isn't it? Yeah, it's routine when you do it. It's routine when you do it.
Order.
And that's your trouble.
Order! The House will come to order.
This is... Good on you, Kim.
No,
sit down,
resume your seat. The Leader of the House will resume his seat. All right, we've had a bit of fun. The Leader of the Opposition, back to your question.
Stop smiling, Michael. That was a real boo-boo, wasn't it? And I quote, the person handing out the preference... Now, this is the interesting bit. The person handing out the preference how-to-vote card should not be wearing any ALP identifiers i.e. badge stickers, T-shirts or hat, end of quote. Does he approve the technique used by the ALP when it used Labor booth workers without identification who were instructed to target voters and to deceive them into believing that they were supporting independence by distributing a how-to-vote card where the words voting independent clearly swamped the ALP logo in this fine print? Why were Labor's dummy independents instructed to continue to issue these bogus how-to-vote cards, even if challenged by booth officials? Will the Prime Minister assure the House that during the ACT by-election for the seat of Canberra, the ALP will not repeat this deliberate deception of voters, and will he refer these incidents to the inquiry referred to in the previous answer?
Mr. Speaker,
the Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, my colleague...
Order.
Mr. Speaker, my colleague, the Minister for Arts and Communication...
The member for Chifley. The member for Chifley. Just relax,
Mr.
Prime
Speaker,
Minister.
As members on this side of the House make clear, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Metherall apparently pioneered this technique in the Liberal Party, but the fact is, Mr. Speaker...
Order, those on my right.
The fact is, Mr. Speaker, I know of none of these matters. Let me come in.
The House will come to order. The House will come to order. The Prime Minister has the call.
But, Mr. Speaker, but unlike the leader of the...
Prime Minister. The Prime Minister has the call.
Unlike the leader of the opposition, I don't condone it, and I say I don't condone it.
But during proceedings, Mr. Keating examined the offending how-to-vote card and hit the roof.
Order.
Speaker,
Now,
Mr. Speaker, the leader
I'll
of the
be listening very carefully
Mr.
to the
Speaker,
response.
the leader of the opposition willfully misled the House. Misled the House.
Order. If the Prime Minister wishes to proceed with a charge of that nature, there are provisions in the standing orders that must be invoked.
Mr. Speaker, well, Mr. Speaker, let me make a further point.
The rules of the House demanded that Mr. Keating move a censure motion against Mr. Howard. Not quite what he planned, because it gave Mr. Howard right of reply. Not that it mattered. Honesty and integrity were at stake.
When I was asked this question by the leader of the opposition, who has been embarrassed by the fact that he has not sought to make clear his position and as such has condoned the tactics of the Liberal Party, the grievous and putrid tactics of push polling, he sought to introduce into the House, Mr. Speaker, a question which he knew to be, the imputations of which he knew to be false. At the time, of course, I was unaware of the matters, and I made that very clear. And as I made it unaware, Honest John guffawed and laughed, and they gave their instructions to the front bench, and they all laughed and went on when I said I didn't know about it, and I didn't know about it. But I said if it was as he described it in New South Wales, I wouldn't condone it. But, Mr. Speaker, I've since been given the material, and it is a complete misrepresentation by the leader of the opposition for what he said.
Order.
What it says is, voting one independent question, don't let the Liberal Alliance chaos in government, don't get Liberal Alliance chaos in government by mistake. Give your preferences to the Australian Labor Party. It's got in numbers a ticket, make your preferences count. It's got the Australian Labor Party logo, and it says, put the Liberals last, and it's authorised by Doug Thompson, the Australian Labor Party, in Belconnen. This how to vote was challenged by the Liberal Party, but cleared by the Electoral Commissioner, Mr. Green. So, Mr. Speaker, the leader of the opposition introduced this matter, knowing his party's actually challenged this, and has had it overruled by the Electoral Commission and the ACT, which only compounds the misleading nature of the question which the member for Bennelong proposed. Now, Mr. Speaker, then he went on about how people were dressed, about as if people have got to go around decked in blue and white with rosettes. As if unless you're not out there with your rosette and your blue and white on, doing a jig at the polls, you're not legitimate. That you can't, Mr. Speaker, go out and say, don't vote for the independents, dressed in a pair of jeans and a T-shirt or something. I mean